Hi, and welcome back to Broadsheet Melbourne Around Town. If this is your first time here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a video. I'm Katja Vakdal, Broadsheet's editorial director and the host of this 10-minute guide to Melbourne. Local Brewing Company is a pub. It's also now a cafe in Clifton Hill, and Evan Jones, who is a Clifton Hill local, is here to tell us all about it. Welcome, Evan.
Thanks, Katja.
This has a really interesting backstory, Local Brewing Company. Tell us about the background.
So 5 friends started the brewery started brewing in 2019 under the name A Local Beer. They've since changed their name, but the idea was kind of interesting in the sense that they wanted their brewery to be for a greater good, essentially. So they've been working with a charity called Second Bite, and if you've been buying their 4-packs, they've been donating a meal for each one. And now, with their brewery, if you buy a pint, they'll do the same.
So tell us about this new location. Is this the first physical location that they've had?
Yeah, so they've just been brewing out of another facility for a while, and they still will be. So this is not a brewery in the sense of, say, Stomping Ground or any of these really large-scale ones. They're going to have a pilot brewery, but it's basically a tap room. So it's a small space where you can go and you can try all the beers and eat a little bit of food. It's an old warehouse or mechanic on a street called Hilton Street, just off Alexandra Parade. Very nondescript, next to a house. If you walk down there, you will not know that you're about to walk into a brewery tap room, which I always love. Being a local in Clifton Hill, I've been poking my head around the corner for ages, wondering when it's going to open, and you can't tell anything from the outside. When you walk in, there's a large glass window, so it's very light filled. So it's a nice little space with a cafe at the very entrance.
It's a nice place to hang out. So let's talk actually about these two elements. So you've got the tap room, but they've also opened a cafe, and that's kind of unusual. So
there's more to come for the cafe. So they mentioned to me that what they've got at the moment is just the beginning. So they've really got some bigger plans for the cafe, which is called Greater Good. But at the moment, the cafe opens in the mornings and rolls into the brewery, which opens in the middle of the afternoon. Right. So you've got an espresso machine and a few sandwiches and that sort of thing.
Yeah, light fare. Like you're not going necessarily for like a huge multi-course brunch situation.
It's certainly not competing with the other big cafes around. It's a good little sort of neighbourhood stop though.
Yep. Now tell us about, though, the tap room. What kind of beers can we expect for those who might not know Local Brewing Company?
So Local Beer's always been around the approachable sort of side. So their lager, XPA and IPA are the ones that most people will be familiar with. The lager is a really fruity, tropical sort of style. So not your traditional straight down the line. The XPA is, again, fairly light and fruity. And they've got a couple of really nice West Coast style IPAs, which are a little bit danker. So those are the ones that you'll find in the cans, in the takeaway, in the merch section. But there's a few ones that you might not be familiar with, some smaller batch sorts of stuff. There was a jam stout, jam donut stout, I should say, which would be perfect for the winter. And a few other interesting. There was a coffee citrus sour as well, which is interesting stuff.
Are those beers that will kind of be limited run and there'll be things changing over time?
Well, that was the suggestion that I got from Nick Campbell, who I spoke to, one of the owners, was that when they have their pilot brew system up, which will be a 500-litre tank in the corner. So if you go in there now, you'll see there's a space to the side of the bar where there's nothing there yet.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a tank. And so they're going to basically ask the people that come in, another element of this community aspect that they have, what do you want to say? What kind of beers would you like us to brew? And so the tap list will rotate and it'll be somewhat up to the tastes of the people that live in Clifton Hill or visit.
That's great. It means you're giving the people who come most regularly what they want.
Exactly.
Now, apart from beers, I'm assuming there's probably a bit of a wine list or like some other things that you might be able to get while you're there.
No, there's a small cocktail list, which is good, and a small wine list. It's very much about the beers.
What about snacks?
So at the moment, they're doing toasties, chicken and cheese, ham and cheese, that sort of thing. So the plan long term is to get a container kitchen in the front courtyard area. If you rock up now, you'll see a concrete driveway with a bit of space. And so the plan is eventually to have a kitchen out there doing pizzas and more expanded food platters and that sort of thing.
Thanks so much, Evan. It sounds like a really lovely local community spot. Great for people living in Clifton Hill, but I think it's probably one of those places that is worth travelling to as well. Sebby Scrolls started during lockdown. It's a tiny little operation and they now have a formal location in Caulfield South. Broadsheet's Ruby Harris is here to tell us all about them. Welcome, Ruby.
Thank you.
So Sebby Scrolls, we've talked about this over the last few months. They've been around for a little while, but suddenly these little scrolls covered in icing seem to be in a lot of different places across Melbourne.
Absolutely. I feel like they have exploded in the past 6 months. They seem to be everywhere. I feel like most cafes that I'm going into at the moment has a Sebby Scrolls display in the front counter, which is great because they're very delicious.
So how did you first come across them and where did you first taste one?
I think the first time I came across them was they were stocked in Hi-Fi, which is a cafe on Smith Street in Fitzroy, right near our office. So I saw them there one day and I was like, that looks like something I need to eat right now.
How big are they? Because I think, if you look at the photos on the Broadsheet site, you can't get a sense of just how they look. Very doughy and very yummy, but how big are they?
They're quite big. I would recommend splitting it with another person. They do have a mini size as well, which I've only actually seen them selling directly. I haven't seen them in cafes before, but the big size is definitely a large snack. So I would go with a friend and split it.
Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about that product, which is it's the only thing they make, isn't it?
They have their cinnamon scrolls. On the weekends, they also do a cheesy mite scroll, which I haven't tried yet, but I'm going to get my hands on soon. So let's go back to, I guess, how this thing started. Like, who is Sebby Scrolls? Who's behind it? Yeah, so behind Sebby is Sebastian, or Sebby. He and his fiancée, Annabelle. So Sebby's worked in fine dining for quite a few years. Annabelle's worked in catering, so the fit makes a lot of sense. Sebby decided to perfect his cinnamon scroll recipe during lockdown, which I think a lot of people were trying to perfect their recipes and their baking in lockdown, but this one, I'm glad, was perfected.
Yeah.
They started delivering them to friends during lockdown and getting people to try them. And everyone was sort of telling them that they had to start selling them. They're like, these are amazing. Annabelle had a commercial kitchen that she was leasing for some of her catering work. So they started just making the scrolls in there. At the end of 2021, they were being stocked in a few cafes, and now they're stocked in cafes all across Melbourne. There's a few locations sort of out regionally as well. And you can also purchase them directly from their kitchen in Caulfield South. Which you have visited a number of times. When did they move to Caulfield South, or was that the catering kitchen? Yeah, so that's the original catering kitchen. So they're still in there. Right now, they are working on opening a coffee window. So in the next few months, you'll be able to go there, buy a coffee, buy a scroll.
They start making these things at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah. So Annabelle told me 3:30 a.m. they're in there, they're baking. It's just Annabelle and Sebby. They've got 2 casuals who help them out, but they're there every single day of the week. And Sebby's never closes. It's open 7 days a week. By 6 a.m, the scrolls are being delivered to cafes across Melbourne. And I'm pretty sure they open at 8 a.m. So you can go in then and start buying your scrolls. And they close earlier most days because they do tend to sell out before closing time.
So tell us about the recipe or kind of what is involved in these scrolls. Have you watched them? I guess it's very early in the morning. You might not have been there to watch them being made.
Yes, I haven't seen the baking process. I've seen them in the oven though. And when you go, the best thing about going directly there, and I really recommend you go there, is you're standing in the kitchen with them when you're buying them. So it smells unbelievable and you're watching the scrolls in the oven and it's really cool. It's there just layers upon layers of dough and caramelized brown sugar, and then they pour the cream cheese topping all over the top, and it just is unbelievable. And you have to eat them warm.
Yeah. Although they do sound, the way you've described them in your story, I'm sure warm is another level, but they do seem so fresh. And so you've mentioned how doughy they are, that they're probably good. Even when they're sitting at room temperature, they're probably quite good.
100%. They are. So I've never had cinnamon scrolls that are like this before. Like, they're such fresh, beautiful scrolls.
They're probably different as well. I think there's a lot of bakeries around. I mean, look, the cinnamon scrolls, it's not the first time that this has been made. It's a kind of a bit of a staple, I think, of not just bakeries, but also, local milk bars. But you said there is something kind of special about this one, and it's obviously incredibly different from some of the Swedish style, kind of Scandinavian style cinnamon buns that have been cropping up at a lot of craft bakeries as well. This feels like an ode, but I guess a kind of personal spin on a traditional kind of Aussie favourite.
You can tell that he spent months perfecting this recipe, and that a lot of thought has gone into, every element of the scroll, from the icing to the layers of dough to the brown sugar.
So obviously they've got the cheesy mite scrolls on the weekend, but when you spoke to them, is there any desires to expand into a full-fledged bakery, or they've just got their eyes on the scrolls for now? Like, what are their plans?
For now, it's just the scrolls. So the coffee window will be opening in their Caulfield South kitchen within the next few months. And the great thing about that is also the whole kitchen is glass windows. And it sits opposite a park. So I'm imagining people are going to go get their takeaway coffee, get their scroll and sit in the park and just watch the scrolls being baked and handed out. And I think that it's going to be so beautiful to sit and watch.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, look, I'm excited. You know, I'm a Southside girl. It's really exciting when one of these places opens in the south.
Absolutely.
So that's where I'll be going. But thanks so much for letting us know about Sebby's. That's all we've got time for today. As always, you can stay up to date at any time at broadsheet.com.au or on Instagram at broadsheet_Melbourne. See you again next week.